The general plot of Look Outside seems fairly straightforward from a surface level perspective. A cosmic being named the Visitor comes to Earth after being observed by an astronomer, Sybil, who lives in your apartment complex. The mere presence of the Visitor seems to be altering reality and mutating everyone that views it for some reason. As the protagonist, Sam, we try to find out what is happening and search our apartment complex, eventually ending up on the roof, where a ritual is taking place. The goal of this ritual is to communicate with the Visitor directly. In the perfect ritual ending, Sam ascends into the cosmos and has a conversation with the Visitor. During this conversation, we are told that the Visitor does not recognize us as being outside of his own being. We are the first other creature of intelligence that he has spoken to. Conversing with Sam, the Visitor learns empathy and individuality simply from interacting with another being outside of itself. See, the Visitor is universally large. It's so huge that it spans over multiple star systems and cosmoses. The massive scale of this being means that certain parts of it independently operate, and it communicates using signals or perhaps brain waves that take quite a long time to reach the other gargantuan parts of its body. Due to the Visitor's biology, there is a theory that when Sybil viewed the Visitor, she sort of tapped into the psychic link that it uses to communicate with larger parts of itself, thus identifying to the Visitor that perhaps Sybil was also an extension of itself, as it had no individuality and everything that it had met to this point was part of its same being. When this psychic link was established, it mutated Sybil and fractured her mind. This is what we see with everyone on Earth that has viewed the concept of the Visitor. They too have been connected to it as an extension of its being. When someone observes the Visitor, or even the concept of the Visitor, you interact with its logic. A creature so monumentally huge and powerful that it establishes its own perception of reality and dictates it. A good way to explain this would be how humans perceive microscopic beings like bacteria. The color and shape of these microorganisms might be dictated by our own perception, how we view them through our human lens. For all we know, these creatures see themselves entirely differently. It could be that they do not have a shape or color until they were observed by a greater intelligence, or perhaps that's just our perception of reality that we have imposed onto them. This is the same way that I see the Visitor imposing its reality onto us. The Visitor is a being of such immense power that it has the ability to warp reality itself, and when it reaches out to a human host, thinking that it is an extension of its own body, it imposes what it knows, its concept of form, onto that host. A prime example of this is the Visitor's actual form. It is a gigantic worm-like being with billions of limbs and countless mouths and orifices. When a transformation takes place with a human, they also take the form of a creature with countless limbs and multiple heads and mouths. Despite the transformation and the direction in which it goes, it is dictated by the concepts that the Visitor understands. When it comes to transformations, I've seen a lot of theories regarding the reason people transform and why they take the form that they do. Some theories believe that people are transforming into their ideal selves. I don't think that's quite true. I think it comes down to whatever that person holds true to reality. So if they believe themselves to be strong and powerful, or they're fixated on that self-image, that's what they'll become. The unfortunate reality, however, is that the fixation is usually negative in nature, like the baby next door in your apartment complex. Their fixation is on teething, the emerging of new teeth and the pain that it must cause. And thus, their transformation is based entirely around this, becoming a giant teeth monstrosity with teeth for eyes and fingers and limbs. Where this becomes really odd is when people start infecting each other with their mutations. We see countless examples of this occur throughout the game. I like to think of it like someone is spreading their logic or ideology onto others. If someone has yet to be touched by the influence of the visitor, then their transformation when infected by another who has is dictated by that person's transformation or logic. An example of this is the family from the teeth apartment, like Joel, growing additional teeth when that was never their fixation. This is also the case with the inhabitants of the bus that crashes into the lobby on the ground floor. Everyone on the bus becomes some version of a hand monster. I think the idea behind that is that someone on that bus, perhaps the bus driver, was very focused on their hands when they saw the visitor, probably because they were driving a bus, ultimately becoming a giant hand monster and most likely infecting everyone else on the bus and informing their transformation. So they came out as hand monsters as well. To explore even deeper in this concept, there are certain examples in the game of people's transformations that are informed by the person infecting them, but are not entirely dictated by them. A good example of this is the landlord, who is infected by the hand monsters in his apartment. However, his transformation is only informed by the hand monsters. What it is dictated by is his own fixation on war. Being a war veteran, the landlord is so heavily fixated, or perhaps his lived reality is still wartime, and thus his transformation and the reality warping effects that it has replicates a battlefield in his own apartment. You can still observe the influence of the hand monster on these creations. The blue skin of the hand monster and the various fingers and hand symbolism still remain, even though the majority of this transformation and reality warping effect is dictated by the landlord's fixation on war. This system of influences and logics sits at the very core of Look Outside. The visitor has the power to warp reality, and upon connecting with the people of Earth, it has shared that power with everyone, whether willing or unwilling, conscious or unconscious of the fact that that has occurred. To summarize this in a simplistic fashion to this point, as these concepts are difficult to explain, there's a three-tiered system that informs transformation. The first tier is the visitor itself. Upon connecting with the visitor, the transformation that the host undertakes is informed by the concept of body, form, and the general reality warping power that the visitor has. Once this transformation has taken place with the host, it is dictated by their fixation or their outlook on reality itself. If that host infects another host, then the transformation for the infected will now also have the structure of the previous host and the influence from the visitor to that previous host's transformation, but it is dictated by the fixation and reality that the infected host now holds. So this is a multi-filter system to help dictate how the most complicated of transformations with the infected takes place. Moving on from transformations, another really bizarre aspect outside of that is where we see inanimate objects being turned animate and gaining sentience. An example of this is the boiler beast and the furnace in the sewers. These two things are objects. They do not have their own consciousness. How did they transform or gain sentience? I think this could be explained by someone else who has been influenced or transformed by the visitor, having a fixation that focuses on either of these two objects. Say, for example, there was a plumber who hated working on the boiler in the basement and viewed it as some kind of a monstrous beast that was constantly requiring maintenance to fix. If that plumber were to get transformed by the visitor's influence, then it is possible that part of his transformation and reality warping that had occurred almost created the boiler beast, and that beast now spits burning acid because he has a past experience of being burned working on the boiler or something. In this way, the boiler coming to life and gaining sentience is a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy for this hypothetical plumber. I believe the same concept applies to Sam when it comes to the shadow enemies, but I'll loop around to that in just a moment. First, I'd like to discuss the theories behind Sam and the astronomers on the rooftop somehow avoiding transformation despite being outside and within direct influence of the visitor. My opinion is that when it comes down to it, everyone has already received some level of influence from the visitor, whether they've looked outside or not. We understand from the offerings in the game that it is just the concept or logic of the visitor that needs to be understood in order for a connection to be established. I believe that simply knowing that something is outside that has reality warping effects is enough for the connection to take place. It may be weaker than a direct influence or observation from the visitor, but you are still connected. In this logic, Sam was influenced from the visitor at the very beginning of the game. Due to this previous connection, when Sam and the other astronomers entered the rooftop, their main focus was that the ritual would succeed and that would protect them from full transformation. This is, in a way, exactly what did protect them. If Sam does give the astronomers the incorrect offerings, they panic and immediately start thinking about transforming. The fear of transforming overtakes their minds, and that's exactly what happens. The visitor tells us directly that it has no ill intentions. It did not mean to harm. It simply, by accident, spread its powers to us. The result of what occurred with those powers comes down to the individual. When it comes to Sam, I think this is expressed through the shadow enemies and the game skills that Sam can learn throughout the course of the game. Starting with the shadow enemies, these creatures show up in random places after Sam has left his apartment for an extended period of time. These creatures can't be understood. Their names are simply question marks. No one else mentions them or is directly confronted by them unless they are with Sam and his party. What I believe is occurring is that Sam is responsible for the manifestation of these shadows. They are a fixation of his on the dangers of the outside world and how uncomfortable it is to be out of his apartment. If these shadows are based on Sam's fear of the unknown, and he is manifesting them through his connection to the visitor, it would explain why they can instantly kill Sam or other party members, which would be about the worst thing that could possibly happen to you, which is why it happens. The flip side of this is the game skills that Sam can learn. We know that Sam is a shut-in gamer and that he likes to find an escape in the realities of the video games that he plays. It's not a coincidence then that through playing these games and living in these other realities that Sam learns skills that can warp his own reality. This is less obvious with skills of a physical nature like the football tackle. Sure, you played a football game, you learned how to tackle someone, that makes sense, sure. But when you think about a skill like numbness, for instance, where Sam disassociates so hard that the fire that he is currently being burned by or the poison that is destroying his body simply disappears. In fact, he ignores the problem so much that it's no longer a problem. This is Sam's influence from the visitor taking place in a positive way. This can be seen as Sam imposing his version of reality over our own, much like Lee does when she extends the hallway in the chase sequence in Floor 2, or Lyle does when he takes a photo of you and traps your soul within it. In a way, a lot of what occurs within Look Outside is a battle of perception and logic. Every creature that we encounter has had their logic either twisted or their reality warped by themselves or others. When we fight these creatures, they are attempting to impose their version of reality onto us, much like Lyle and his soul-stealing photograph, or the hell car somehow managing to take us to the concept of hell, the physical manifestation a religious concept. So how then do weapons like guns and knives actually hurt these creatures when they are warping reality itself? I believe what matters most in this circumstance isn't the weapons themselves, but Sam and his party's understanding of what the weapons do in our own reality. Guns shoot, knives stab, explosives destroy. And the belief in those concepts from Sam and his party is what deals damage to these other creatures. They believe a shotgun will blow off an arm. They believe a flamethrower will burn. And pushing that belief against the logic of the transformed creatures, eventually your logic wins and they die. I think this is why Sam and his party would be able to fight and best a living god like the Exalted Four. We see in their ending that they are essentially omnipotent, flying around, vaporizing people with those lasers. But Sam can take them down with a machine gun, which doesn't make a lot of sense if you think about it. Or does it? Is it because Sam is in a battle of logic and reality, and if he fights hard enough, then he can rewrite reality in his favor, and the Exalted Four fall? I have some more thoughts on this game and some various things that happen within it, but I've talked a lot of shit so far, and I'm sure some people want to tear into me for that, so I'm gonna cut it here for now. Thanks for listening to me ramble, and yeah, please argue with me in the comments. What are your ideas about the concepts that I've discussed? I'm interested to pick your brain. Alright, see you next time.
Cheese man, cheese man.
Who keeps saying cheese man?
Cheese man, cheese man.